and ask the clerk call the roll.
Okay. Mayor Warren?
Here.
Vice Mayor Bell? Here. Councilwoman Garner? Here. Councilman Hodge?
Here.
Councilman Losner?
Here.
Councilman Porter?
Here.
Councilwoman Waldman?
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are we expecting anyone else from the management staff before we start? All right. If somebody could check quickly to see if Mr. Ivey or Mr. Shahada or either or both will be joining us, because give them the opportunity to do that. I would draw your attention, though, while we are awaiting their arrival, to Mr. Chandra's memorandum that is attached as the second page to the proposed ordinance that clarifies some of the provisions that carry over from the Southwest Master Plan that were not intended to be included. Would be my suggestion that they be deleted from the ordinance as it moves forward. Patty, do you know where they come from? Okay, very good.
What section was that?
Right here. Well, this cover letter talking about the...
If I had the color there.
All right. Get that the right copy. Oh, okay. Mike, is Kurt coming in? Okay, well, maybe we can go ahead and start. And for the record, this is the first full council analysis of an ordinance enacting a moratorium in the Northwest area that the council directed be prepared. Again, the Northwest area is defined on the north as the northern city limits, on the east US 1, the west side of US 1, to the west, wherever the city limits would be, and to the south would be the north side of Mowry Street. So from Mowry to the northern city limits, between basically Redland Road and in some places a little bit west of Redland Road, over to the western side of US 1. In a nutshell, this ordinance only precludes multifamily development for a period of 1 year within the defined Northwest area. It does not preclude any other activity that would otherwise be permitted or could even be requested. Now, an exception to the exception is that multifamily development along the busway corridor is not precluded. So that, you may recall that a couple of years ago when we did the comprehensive citywide moratorium, we designated, we defined what the busway corridor meant and allowed for density in excess of 6, I believe in some instances up to 15, Susan, along the busway corridor. That kind of project during the pendency of this moratorium and the subsequent enactment of the Northwest Master Plan would not be precluded. You may recall that, at least in my mind, this is a direct result of some of the matters we've all, quite frankly, struggled with over the last year, where the underlying comp plan designation allows for uses and density at a far greater rate than the zoning overlay requires. And in large measure, I view the master plan process as an opportunity to reconcile those inconsistencies and probably take some sub-areas, such as Duplex City, in the Northwest area and formulate some plans. But this moratorium simply, again, as we did substantially and successfully in the Southwest area, it gives us the breathing room so that the plan, as Rick Stotts is so adept at saying, our plan doesn't chase the development comes in accordance with the plan. And Mr. Stotts went on record at P&Z when he and I made the presentation that the Community Redevelopment Agency has no objection to this proposal. It will not hinder any of their known projects or even conceivable projects that may come along within that defined CRA. So with that, I guess we'll open it up for any questions or comments from council. Jeff, Mr. Porter?
Just one, I guess, to staff, one of the things that the most discouraging thing to me that the came out of the Southwest Neighborhood Plan was only the fact that it took so long.
Yeah.
So, you know, we find ourselves with an opportunity here to do something really good in the Northwest area, and at the same time, we need to remember that when we're doing this, if we drag this thing out for more than a year, we hurt the people that need it the most, because they are the areas that are going to be the farthest behind, which is the multifamily. So, you know, I support the initiative, but I just want us to be very, very careful with the timeline when it comes to, you know, I mean, I've been here for 7 years, and I think that the Southwest Neighborhood, you know, that whole area has been on the table for the 7 years that I've been here. And I think the end product is a good end product, but I don't think that we have that kind of time when it comes to this particular area, because one of the things too that we had in the Southwest Neighborhood Plan was the empowerment zone pumping $70–80 million into the project, if I'm not correct. Is that correct? They are.
They say they're going to.
Understood. Okay. If in fact they do what they said they were going to do, we're going to have a substantial partner in some of the infrastructure issues. So,
yes, sir.
You know, again, I agree with your analysis, Rick, with let's make a plan and you know, and chase the plan, not the opposite direction. But I don't want us to delay. Would this project be done in-house by city staff, or is it going to be done with a consultant to help?
That's one of the questions I was going to make, or at least one of the comments I was going to mention based on your comments, Mr. Porter. One, the 1 year time frame which we have in this thing right now, I think is doable. The problem I foresee is, first of all, I do not really think it's going to be done in-house with staff based on what staff has to do. Therefore, it needs to go outside. Therefore, my first thought about going outside is, where does the money come from? Where do we put the cut on a budget so that we can cover that, and then from there we can figure out maybe who and where.
Well, I guess one of the comments is, and I'll, after I say what, you know, we're so busy internally inside your department, and I know you just came on board, and you got a little bit of a learning curve. Not that you don't already know what you're doing, but it's applying it to this area, to this community, to our community is a little bit different. But as we go forward, you know, that's one of those things that I think in the past we've had too many irons in the fire, too many balls up in the air, and we weren't able to do some of the things that we could have done. So if we're going to do this, I think outside help would be appropriate, and I guess Mike had a comment.
Mr. Mayor, council members, actually we had a discussion a few minutes ago, Kurt, Susan and myself, and we are really erring towards going outside for somebody to do it from outside. Like you said, I mean, everybody's really very busy internally, and we like to have a fresh set of eyes to come from outside and take a look at what needs to be done there and assess it. So most probably it's going to be outside, and when we go through, financially we're going to assess if we need something this fiscal year, or we could wait until we start the new fiscal year and ask for money to do the assessment, but definitely we err towards that direction.
Last comment would be, if in fact we bring in someone from the outside, I think it would be appropriate for them to give an update to the council members, maybe once or twice before the final plan, because I know we sat here and one of our consultants did a whole plan in the Southwest Neighborhood, brought back, they took all the industrial property out, they made it all high-density residential, and we just had the council, I think, we just told them, nope, we're not going to accept this, go back to the drawing board. Now, that cost us a year and a half, 2 years, I don't really know. But before an outside consultant takes their vision completely to the end of the run, before we have a chance as a council to look at it, I think it'd be nice to work in a kind of an opportunity for us to see where they're going. I don't know if that makes sense, but I know Kimberly Horn was the one. I think Steve, you and I were sitting in that meeting when they revamped this whole thing about changing all of the land uses to medium to high density, and I think we just sent them back to the table.
And that is a good lesson on giving whoever's going to work on this with us some better instruction and direction up front, and keeping a finger on it. And I'll tell you, Mr. Porter, your questions and your concerns are right on point with those expressed at length by planning and zoning. And I guess the answer is that the issues in this Northwest area are not nearly as comprehensive as those in other areas. And certainly not that level of detail and not the opportunity to work with essentially a clean slate as we did in the Southwest Master Plan. So I don't envision that the issues are nearly as complex or as far-reaching, and clearly I think it's doable. A mix of in-house and a mix of outside, far cheaper and far faster.
Thank you. That's all my comments.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, Steve, for bringing this forth rather quickly. Appreciate it. When we initiated the Southwest Master Plan, we had numerous charrettes in the community. And, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see you get some idea from the community perspective what they'd like to see take place in the Northwest section. Which charrettes, however you may schedule town hall meetings or whatever, I think that would be very important. Secondly, in terms of funding, I think it's a very good idea that we look on the outside, maybe with Kimberly Horn again, being that they're pretty much familiar with Homestead, and they could probably do it quicker. And I'm just talking out, they may want to look at somebody else, but as Mr. Porter said earlier, if we hire whomever we hire, we probably want to put some time limits on it. So we want it back within a period of time so we can move it very quickly. And thirdly, I think I did have a brief discussion with Andre Wallace from the Empowerment Trust, so we could put together requests for some resources from the Empowerment Trust to assist us on this study. He didn't say he wouldn't do it, so if that could be a potential funding source to help us with the study. So those are the three responses I have, but I do think we need to embrace this and fill the gap with some charrette from the public input. I think it would be very helpful.
Well, and I'll tell you, Mayor, that I know there is some real concern and interest from those in the agricultural community who have concerns about housing for either, not wiping out the available housing for those who support the agricultural industry, that if not within pockets of this area, where, and this may morph into something that we can work with the Empowerment Zone and Miami-Dade County and Everglades, and maybe even the Homestead Housing Authority, for comprehensive solutions there for those issues as well. And this plan will by necessity have to touch on those issues. Okay, Ms. Garner, did I see you? Do I see? Okay.
Comment.
Vice Mayor.
First of all, I think it's great, very well timed, and I just had a meeting today with the Florida Design Institute, the Cantonese Institute, and we're going to be working on an area within this area that doesn't even come close to the size and scope of what you're trying to do, but I think it can work hand in hand, and they may come back with some very good free ideas for us as well. And just let you know up front, we're probably going to pull you in on this with me.
We need to do that, and I know that those who worked with the downtown setting up the TIF district have indicated to me, and perhaps others, that there are segments of this larger area that could stand alone as a redevelopment area, and we'll pursue that as a potential funding source as well. Mr. Hodge?
Let me just mention, one area that really concerns me, and you've addressed it here briefly, we really need to get on top of what's going to happen with that new hospital. I don't want to get in a debate with Baptists if they bring something there that is unacceptable to us. So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't have an update on what their focus is on, we need to find out up front to say that would not be accepted, because I've heard some awful things.
And we can help steer it in the direction.
We can steer it in the right direction to make sure that as we revitalize this community, that's a major piece of the puzzle in the Northwest. And to bring something in that is unacceptable would be catastrophic. So, and there are some issues out there, and I won't mention them because I want to call people on the spot, but I don't think this council will accept it. So we need to be out front and even may want to propose some things that we will accept at that location. But if you hear some of the things that are going in this community, it would not be acceptable to any of us, to the average citizens in Homestead. So we need to get on top of it very quickly.
Completely agree, and that was certainly expressed by all of the members of the Planning and Zoning Board as well. That's, because those other stories, no matter whether they're grounded in fact or not, are so far afield that they are really a concern. One issue that we do need to address, Susan, I'm looking for the provision, is that we need to try to avoid getting into the P word, the pipeline issues, and draw the bright line in the sand as to who's in and who's out. And I think the question is, pardon? Bottom of page 3 or section 3? Page 3. Bottom of page 3, okay. Go to the last whereas, and we're going to be called upon to draw the line in the sand as to what date is the date that you get to come in and slip under the moratorium, and then afterwards you're out of luck. I think we've covered it here. That's got to be paid for. It has to be complete. It has to be accepted. Is that fair assessment, staff? Now, if this moves forward, this would have a first reading when?
Let me give you a couple of answers on the first reading. It's a function of time at this point, and since I know we're going to talk about that, I did a little bit of checking. You can't vote on it tonight, I understand that, but in order to have a vote so that by the second scheduled meeting in August, the 15th, you could have both the first and the second reading be on the 15th, and the 10 days minimum space between the two, and considering whatever we do today needs to get defined tomorrow, put in the paper, you have a window of a special meeting between the 3rd and the 5th of August. If we miss that window, then you cannot get on the 15th between 1st and 2nd. So if it's as quick as possible, the 15th is the first time which we can get 2 meetings, which means you'd have to have a special call.
That'd be a second reading.
Yeah, I'm trying to...
But this date can be first reading, assuming it's passed on first reading. Is that correct, Susan? That this date could be the date of the first reading with an affirmative vote. Is that correct?
You mean today?
No. The date... In other words, if we get to the line in the sand, could be today.
Yeah. Yes.
It could be today, or it could be, and probably more fairly, first reading.
Yes, from the meeting, the guidance we got from staff and from you was to mimic what we had done with the Southwest, so we weren't reinventing the wheel, and we could tailor it to meet this situation.
Okay. Well, I would suggest then that maybe council gives some consensus that whatever the date may be the date of the first reading, the passage on first reading. And I guess I would ask the mayor and the clerk to coordinate and ask that special call, first reading, happen sometime in that window that Mr. Chandra discussed. What would that be, 3rd, 4th, or 5th?
3rd, 4th, or 5th, yes, sir.
Which is what, next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
I didn't even look for that.
First is
Wednesday's the 3rd, you're right. It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yes, sir.
We have nothing else next week, do we? Do we have a calendar? We have a
regular meeting on the 1st.
But it cannot be that day.
No, not based on the times.
You have your visioning and the visioning
on the
5th of August.
Will that be here or is that elsewhere?
No, I don't.
We don't know. But that's Friday, right?
Yeah, I can check that real quick and see. Hold on.
It was a TBA for the visioning session. Chairman, can I ask one question?
Yes, Mr. Porter.
Is there any idea of what the cost would be? Would we know the cost by the time we can get to a special call on this, the cost of doing this study?
I don't think so at this point, sir. Reasoning being that if indeed we go the route of the Southwest Master Plan and money comes from the empowerment zone or other people, I do not know if that could be done between now and then. I really don't know. And again, I haven't even talked about that, so maybe Mike or Rick know more about it, but I think it's going to be kind of hard to put a price tag on it by then.
But the special call basically would just, first reading would establish a closing of the pipeline.
I believe that's what Mr. Loudon is.
It has nothing to do with hiring or implementing or paying for a plan. It's closing the gate so we can begin that work.
And I need to talk a little bit more in terms of what actually closes the pipeline. If indeed we agree that if it's the first reading as a third or the fifth, fine. I got no problem with that date. I'm still a little concerned or maybe confused in terms of what it means, and I'll work it back from what's written here. A permit approval and paid for, I have to realize that from a permit standpoint, once it comes in, there's probably at least a 30-day time because that permit gets reviewed by us here, reviewed first by zoning to see if there's a problem with it. Then we start to review it, but then it goes to the fire department, or basically Dade County. We have no control over that time. So by the time it comes back, all I'm pointing out is the day it comes in to the day we're ready to go, that may be 45 days. And I don't really know how we treat that yet. And my concern basically is that we're all on the same page so we know where it is. If it's coming in the door, that's one thing. Actually being approved, most of the things we're talking about,
I wonder if it might be better language though in the permit context. Let's assume someone could come in as a matter of right and pull a permit. In the permit context, maybe it's not the, it would be, a complete permit application fully paid for. Because if they're in the approval process on this date, I don't know that it's really fair to kick them out. We're going to have the same people back at the podium 30 days from now.
But unfortunately, the way the permit system is set up is you bring it in, you may end up doing a $200 upfront fee, and we can make that part of this, but then you don't pay for the permit until everything's ready. The machine will not let you do it. But if we had assigned the upfront $200 and use that as a starting point, that'll give us something coming in the door that we know exactly where it is.
So what I'm getting at, I would hate to see a stampede to the door
I understand
between now and the 3rd, 4th, or 5th just to slip under that bar.
Right. That's the reason why I want to bring this up tonight, because we need to know exactly what the council's thoughts are so that we can implement it within the next couple of weeks without going around and around in circles and not sure
let me ask
exactly
you
what it
this.
is.
If we fell back and said, today's the day, between now and first reading, maybe you could give us an idea of how many permits in that process would this affect and adjust that date accordingly.
I don't know if that would be available, but I do think if you decide to pick a date, even if you say it's from today on, at least we know when we're starting, and you don't really have a mad dash to get under the wire because the wire's already been set.
If they're in now, they're in, and
that's the best advantage from that standpoint. They're in it or not, no question about it. If indeed we can, if Susan can verify, if today can be the date, or whatever date that the council decides. Then there isn't what I was in, the date is set, you know exactly where it is. That would also allow me, I hate to say this, between now and the next meeting to figure out exactly what are the potholes in that approach and see if we need to adjust it a little bit. The site plan...
I always say sooner rather than later.
Oh, I agree with you, simply because...
Would you be comfortable if we said today with...
More comfortable than anything else, because at least I have a definite date to work back and forth from. And like I say, give me a week between now and that special call to figure out...
And we can make that adjustment depending...
Yes, sir.
And you're saying approved today or applied today?
I think by virtue of the process, it has to be applied today. Correct, Brent?
That's the way I would rather say it.
Because application doesn't necessarily mean approval.
Yes, sir.
You could have applied Friday and not be approved until the middle of September.
Correct. Now, this means if you did apply Friday and it continues through the chain and it works, you got it.
And that's fine.
We
live with that.
The advantage with doing it tonight, I'm not trying to push it, but it does make it easier, is that there's a definite date. We don't have, I hate to say this, a week in between where everybody can hear what's going on, decide what they want to do and come in. If we do it tonight, if nobody else was here, was that interested, unfortunately, it's their problem. We at least define a date.
Between first and second reading, we may in fact have people who come in and have said, we did a dry run with our plans, and we'll deal with that.
This gives
it's easier to draw the line today,
this gives
the date today.
A week to develop an answer for a small number of things, rather than...
Allowing a stampede.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Now,
Mr. Chairman, council members, I was exactly going to say this. From our prior experiences, it was a nightmare when we establish a date coming in the future.
Yes.
If it's doable legally tonight, it administratively takes that nightmare away. And we could decide what's in the pipeline and what's not with the help of Susan.
I agree with that.
Well, colleagues, is today a good day?
Today's a good day.
See heads bobbing? Okay. I think we've got our consensus to fill in today's date. And then, there's always somebody who's going to be within that and a case-by-case basis.
But then we're doing a case-by-case small number rather than a case-by-case everybody else. So I do agree, doing it tight makes it a lot easier for staff as well.
All right, and then ask the mayor to coordinate that special call with the clerk.
I do. Mr. Chairman, the notification process, how do we get the word out?
Notification for...
To the, will we put...
Normal public.
Well, first of all...
Mayor, if I may?
Okay.
This ordinance has to be treated as a zoning ordinance by law, so it will have the large ad in the Herald before both first and second reading, with the large font and everything.
And the reason why we need to know that today, because whatever modifications we make to the ordinance has to be corrected, and we need to have the map, which we have, to be able to put it in the paper, and I'm leaving myself a whole day tomorrow to fill in any blanks and get it to the paper so it start to run on the 27th, and that's what gave me the window of the 3rd to the 5th. And I'd like to stay within that window if I can, rather than trying to get it out tomorrow morning without us making sure exactly what we're putting in it. So again, really, if you can stay within it, when I realize it's a very short window, not giving you a heck of a lot of choice, but if indeed we're trying to do this, and with today's date and the other two, it kind of stacks together, just the way things go. You want to do something in a hurry, sometimes it has to work that fast.
All right. So we'll let the mayor and the clerk do that. I have a question, I guess whoever can answer this. On the top of page 3, the second asterisk, the 3,600 to 7,500 square feet. Was that something that was peculiar to the Southwest as well, that perhaps does not belong here?
These are items that came over from the Southwest ordinance, and I think was part of our discussion. Right?
The reason for the 3,600, Mr. Chairman, was to set a floor, because the moratorium ordinance here, as the one in the Southwest did, allowed someone to apply for a single-family house on a lot as long as that lot was comparable to other built-out lots on the same block. But we didn't want that to happen on an 1,850 square foot lot where there were other 1,850 square foot lots with houses on them.
Let me ask you this then. Under today's guidelines in the Northwest, anywhere else in Northwest Homestead, what's the minimum square footage for a buildable single-family lot?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
And I've never been able to determine whether or not it's still 7,500 or lots having an average frontage of 60 feet. To me, it's still very confusing. So I think that's probably what needs to be in here. I mean, clearly there are some lots in the Northwest and in this area that are less than 75 and greater than 36, but I don't know what that floor needs to be.
Well, again, the reason that this was in the Southwest, if my memory serves me correctly, and I was not there when they started it, I remember talking about it. We also talked about the neighborhood plan when that was floated around for a while, was, as Rick said, to be able to keep the integrity of a block by basically the size of what it is. So in that case, you would be changing the size of the lot itself to match what's next to it. The houses themselves, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's so much for a 2-bedroom, so much for a 3-bedroom, square footage, period. Now, that square footage could be
Now, that's in the Northwest or Southwest?
It's everywhere.
Everywhere, okay.
There's a limit for the size. Now, figuring how that size would fit the 3,600, et cetera, you got to play with, again, what's in the neighborhood, how does it actually give you the same context of what's there. I don't really see a big problem with this as long as we look at it this way as a function of what's around. Like, again, Rick said, if they're all bigger and one guy is small, the one guy may be...
In that area between the 36 and the 75, if we're keeping the language that if the lot matches that of a majority, we're okay.
Yes. That gives you the context, so it doesn't look all of a sudden, I hate to say it, much bigger or much smaller than the neighbors. That was the reason for it, and I think that probably is still a valid approach unless you guys...
Well, quite frankly, I would think in the Northwest, you do not have as many small lots on as many blocks as you have in the Southwest. So if that 3,600 number is adjusted, it would give me no grief at all. I think 7,500 is the upper limit that we would want to go on from the 36 to 75.
There's still 50 by hundreds.
Yeah.
But there are 4 of them across the street from me.
So
maybe that floor ought to be 5,000 to 7,500.
I say what we can do in the meantime is, we realize where it came from, and I think the item is still valid. What we may need to do is take a look at really what we're dealing with, and maybe the number between now and the first reading, or now and the first and second reading,
and maybe an upward adjustment to around 5,000.
But the concept, I think, is still valid.
Okay. Any further comments or questions from council?
Move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
This is a workshop, I don't think we vote, do we?
Let me just ask one question. Now, we don't need to put it into the ordinance, I don't assume, but we do need to have clear understanding that we'll hear from the group about a process on the moratorium, more than just the day that the final moratorium comes up.
I don't see any problem.
That's the plan.
I don't see any problem with that as an approach, Mr. Porter. It makes a lot of sense, because again, I realized the last time that, even though I wasn't here, something coming full-blown to council before you had a chance to look at it is not a very good idea. So waste a lot of people's time, really the time got lost.
Well, the point being that there could be constructive criticism from everyone as the process is being designed, instead of waiting until the process is finished and then trying to go back and redo it.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Nothing further, we'll adjourn the workshop. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't know what the number was, but I knew it varies depending on if it's 1 or 2 or 3. It's actually